The sun was just beginning to set over the Atlantic, painting the Miami skyline in streaks of orange and gold. Waves lapped lazily against the shore, a gentle rhythm that contrasted sharply with the pounding of Alexander River's pulse. He stood on the edge of his infinity pool, overlooking the ocean, a glass of scotch in hand, but his thoughts weren't on the amber liquid swirling in the glass. Alexander had it all, or so the world believed. A sprawling beachfront estate, yachts that gleamed under the Miami sun, a private jet, and a financial empire that stretched across continents. On paper, he was untouchable. Yet, standing there, in the quiet before the night, Alexander felt more empty than he had in years. He had conquered industries, outsmarted rivals, and been admired by thousands. But the one thing he hadn't found was someone who could pierce the walls he had built around his heart. A soft ping from his phone broke. The silence. Alexander ignored it, knowing it was probably another assistant reminding him of some meeting he had already scheduled for the next day. Meetings, numbers, contracts, profits. They had been his world for so long that he had forgotten how it felt to simply feel. That was when he first saw her. Maya Turner. She wasn't supposed to be here, not yet. Maya, a young, vibrant creative director from New York, had flown down for a short-term project. She was supposed to oversee the redesign of Alexander's newest luxury resort, a task she approached with meticulous precision. But she wasn't just good at her job. She was magnetic, confident, and completely unaware of the effect she had on everyone around her. Alexander first noticed her during the site tour. She wore a navy blouse with crisp lines that accentuated her toned figure. Her hair pulled back loosely to reveal high cheekbones and a sharp jawline. Her green eyes scanned the construction plans with laser focus, occasionally jotting notes, occasionally smiling at her team, but never at him. He was intrigued. "She's nothing like the other women I know," he muttered to himself, stepping closer. He could see the curve of her smile, the slight raise of her brow when she disagreed with a contractor. She commanded attention without even trying, and Alexander, for the first time in years, felt challenged. She turned suddenly, catching his gaze for a moment. Time seemed to stop. Alexander saw not fear or awe, but evaluation, as if she was measuring him and deciding whether he was worth her attention. He walked over, keeping his expression calm, confident. "Maya Turner," his voice carried across the site, calm but deliberate. She didn't flinch. "Yes, and you're Alexander Rivers, I presume." Her tone was polite, yet firm. He nodded, a faint smirk tugging at his lips. "I am. I suppose we're going to be seeing a lot of each other these next few weeks." She raised an eyebrow. "I hope so, but I should warn you, I don't work well with people who let their reputations run ahead of them." Alexander felt a rush of amusement and intrigue. This was new. Most people in his world either bowed to the aura of his power or tried to manipulate it. Maya didn't do either. "Good," he said, leaning slightly against the railing. "I don't work well with people who lack confidence. Seems we're even." A flicker of a smile crossed her lips. "Seems we are." And that was the moment. Alexander realized she was different. Not just talented, not just beautiful, but untouchable in a way that made him want to reach her, while also warning him that she wouldn't be easily won. They walked together through the partially completed resort. Alexander tried to keep the conversation light. "So, you're from New York?" "Yes, Brooklyn," she said, her eyes never leaving the blueprints she carried. "And no, I don't consider myself like the others who come here and admire the ocean view more than the actual work. He chuckled softly. Good. I need someone who notices the details. Someone who sees beyond the surface. You'll fit in perfectly here. Maya looked at him, her gaze sharp. We'll see. I've worked with wealthy clients before. Some are great, some not so much. I hope I fall into the first category, Alexander said, his smirk more playful this time. Her lips quirked into a small, skeptical smile. I'll be the judge of that. They moved to the balcony overlooking the ocean. The sun dipped lower, the water shimmering gold. The air was warm, but crisp with the scent of salt. Alexander leaned on the railing, trying to hide his curiosity behind a mask of control. You seem distracted, Maya said suddenly, noticing his gaze. Alexander met her eyes. For a fleeting moment, he felt vulnerable, the kind of vulnerability he hadn't allowed anyone to see. Maybe I am, he admitted, but I don't usually admit to that. Maya raised an eyebrow. Then maybe I should consider myself honored. Alexander laughed, a low, rich sound that seemed to blend with the waves. You should. You're not like anyone I've ever met. And just like that, standing on the edge of the balcony with the Miami sunset reflecting in the ocean, Alexander Rivers felt something he hadn't felt in a long time. A spark of something real. Something uncontrollable. The next morning, Miami woke slowly beneath a sky painted in soft pastels. Alexander Rivers was already in his office, a glass of black coffee in hand, the sunlight reflecting off the glass walls of his beachfront penthouse, the hum of his computers, the faint scent of the ocean drifting through the balcony doors, and the distant sounds of morning traffic created a rhythm he had long grown accustomed to. But today, he wasn't thinking about spreadsheets or market fluctuations. He was thinking about Maya Turner. He could still see her clearly in his mind, the way she held her blueprints during the site tour, her sharp green eyes scanning the details, the faint crease between her brows whenever a contractor explained something inaccurately. She didn't just observe, she judged, calculated, and assessed everything in her path. And the more he thought about it, the more he realized she had unsettled him in ways no one else ever had. Alexander sent a brief text to Maya, asking her to meet him at the resort's private lounge for coffee. 10 minutes later, she arrived, carrying her portfolio and looking effortlessly composed in a tailored blazer and pencil skirt. Her hair fell loosely over her shoulders, catching the morning light. "Good morning, Alexander," she said, her voice calm, professional. "Morning, Maya," he replied, gesturing to the seat across from him. "I wanted to talk about the project, but I also wanted a moment to just talk." Maya raised an eyebrow. "Just talk?" she asked cautiously, sitting down. "Yes," he said, leaning back in his chair. "I realized that while we're working together professionally, there's a lot we haven't discussed, and I'd like to change that." Maya folded her arms, her gaze steady. "All right, I'm listening." The conversation, high tension and emotional layers. "Alexander, I have to admit, you're different from anyone I've met in my life. You don't flinch at my wealth. You don't fall into the usual traps, and, frankly, I find that fascinating." Maya, tilting her head, curious, fascinating, or intimidating. Alexander, smirking both, and maybe a little infuriating, if I'm honest. "Maya, I'm not here to be entertained, Alexander. I'm here to make sure the project succeeds. That's all, Alexander. I know, and I respect that. But I also think we both know that this isn't just about work anymore. Maya, leaning slightly forward, is that your way of saying you're interested in me? Or just impressed by my ability to do my job better than everyone else? Alexander, laughing softly, maybe both. But trust me, Maya, I'm not used to being impressed. And I'm not used to feeling this. Unsettled. Maya, unsettled. Alexander, yes. You make me feel like I can't control everything. And I don't like losing control. Maya paused, considering his words carefully. There was an honesty in his voice that she hadn't expected. A billionaire CEO, a man used to having everything, admitting that he felt vulnerable around her. Maya, perhaps that's because you've never met anyone who refuses to be managed or impressed by your wealth. Alexander, smiling, leaning back, you might be right. And I have to admit, I like that challenge. Rising tension, internal conflicts, as the conversation progressed. Both Alexander and Maya became acutely aware of the growing tension. Between them, Alexander was struggling with the realization that this woman could bypass all of his defenses, while Maya wrestled with the thought of being drawn into a man's life that was larger, richer, and more powerful than anything she had experienced. The ocean breeze drifted in through the open windows, carrying the faint scent of salt water and morning coffee. Alexander noticed the way Maya's hair caught the sunlight, the subtle curve of her lips as she considered her words. And in that moment, he understood. He wanted her, not just her talent, but her trust, her mind, and maybe her heart. Alexander, Maya, I'm going to be honest. I've spent my life building walls around myself. Walls of money, walls of power, walls of control, and somehow you've started knocking them down. Maya, I don't intend to knock anything down. I just refuse to be ignored or manipulated. Alexander, and that's exactly what's driving me crazy. You make me want to be better. Not for anyone else, just to be worthy of your respect. Maya looked at him, her green eyes softening slightly. She felt her own heart quicken, the subtle pull of something more than professional respect creeping in. But she also reminded herself of the risks. Alexander was powerful, his world complicated, and she was stepping into it willingly. Maya, I can respect that. But respect isn't enough. I need to see actions, not just words. Alexander, smiling knowingly, then you'll see them. And hopefully, you'll like what you see. Climactic moment, emotional high as they sat together. The sunlight, now fully spilling into the room, casting golden reflections across the polished wood and marble. The tension between them reached a peak. Neither could ignore the growing pull, the curiosity, and the dangerous fascination that simmered beneath every glance, every word. Alexander, I don't usually admit this, but I'm afraid of losing this. Losing you, Maya. Not used to fearing something you want, are you? Alexander, shaking his head slightly, no. But you've changed that. You've made me realize that some things are worth risking control for. Maya, then we'll see how far you're willing to go, Alexander. The waves crashed softly outside, the city of Miami bustling below, but inside that lounge time seemed to slow. In that moment, both realized that their partnership had shifted from professional respect to something far more complex, dangerous, and intoxicating. The evening air was warm as the sun dipped below the horizon, casting a golden glow across the Miami skyline. Alexander Rivers stood on the balcony of his penthouse, staring out at the city that had been his empire for years. The sound of the ocean waves crashing against the shore below blended with the quiet hum of the city. but it was the silence between him and Maya that weighed the most heavily on his mind. Since their conversation earlier that day, things had shifted between them. Maya had never been one to fall easily into someone else's world, and Alexander knew that. But there was something else, a distance that had grown between them. A wall that neither was willing to acknowledge, but both could feel. Maya had agreed to meet him tonight, but Alexander wasn't sure what to expect. Would she continue to challenge him as she had before? Or would she pull away completely, retreating back into her world, leaving him to rebuild the walls he had so carefully constructed? The sound of footsteps broke his thoughts. Maya stepped onto the balcony, the faint scent of jasmine and salt water trailing behind her. She wore a simple white dress that fluttered in the warm evening breeze, her hair loosely tied back in a bun, her eyes guarded but not cold. "You're quiet tonight," she said softly, stepping closer, but maintaining a respectful distance. "I've been thinking," he replied, his gaze still on the view. "About us, about everything that's happening." Maya tilted her head slightly, her expression unreadable. "And what are you thinking about, Alexander?" He finally turned to face her, meeting her steady gaze. "I'm thinking about how I want this to work, wanting you to be a part of my world, but not wanting to pull you into something that might not be what you need." Maya's lips pressed into a tight line, and she crossed her arms over her chest, a defensive gesture. "You've got it all figured out, haven't you? The perfect life, the perfect job, the perfect everything." Her voice was steady, but there was an edge to it. "But what about what I want, Alexander?" "I know you're independent, Maya," he said, softly, stepping closer to her. "And that's one of the things I admire most about you. But I also know you've been hurt before, and I don't want to be the reason you build more walls around yourself." Maya's eyes softened, and for a brief moment, the hardness in her demeanor seemed to fade. "I've been hurt, yes, but that's not the reason I keep my distance. I just don't want to lose myself in someone else's world. I've worked hard to get where I am, and I won't let anyone take that from me." Alexander understood the weight of her words. He had built his empire piece by piece, but it had cost him. What had he really built? A life full of success, yes, but one that had been devoid of genuine connection for far too long. And now, standing here with Maya, he felt the truth of what he had lost. "You won't lose yourself with me," he said, his voice steady but filled with earnestness. "I'm not asking you to be anyone but yourself. I'm asking you to be with me." Maya shook her head slightly, stepping back, her arms uncrossing but still holding a hint of resistance. "I don't know if I can do that. You have everything. I have me, and I'm not sure that's enough to fit into your world." Alexander's heart pounded as he stepped closer to her, almost involuntarily. "What if my world isn't just about the money and the power, Maya? What if it's about finding something real, something that's worth more than all of it?" The tension between them grew as they stood inches apart, the space between them electric. Maya could feel the pull, but she wasn't sure if she was ready to take the leap. She had always prided herself on her independence. Could she really trust Alexander? Could she let him in without losing herself? "Maya, what if I get hurt again? What if I'm not strong enough to deal with everything your world demands?" "Alexander, I can't promise we won't face challenges, Maya, but I can promise you this. I'll face them with you. I'll fight for you, and I'll fight for us." Maya looked up at him, her eyes searching his for sincerity, for a truth that would make the leap worth it. For a moment, the world outside seemed to disappear. The only thing that mattered was This connection, this choice. She exhaled deeply, her heart still racing. But the walls she had built inside her slowly began to crumble. Maybe this could work. Maybe she didn't have to choose between love and independence. Maya, I want to believe you, Alexander. But I can't promise you anything. Not yet. Alexander, softly, that's all I can ask for. A chance to prove myself. To prove to you that I can be the man you need. There was a long pause as Maya took in his words. She could see the vulnerability in him, the fear of losing someone he cared about. It wasn't a side of him she had seen before, and for the first time. She felt the depth of the man standing before her. Maya, maybe. We'll see where this goes. But don't expect me to just fall in line with your world, Alexander. I'm not like the others. Alexander, smiling faintly, I don't want you to be. I want you to be exactly who you are. The following days passed in a blur. The excitement of their newfound partnership was quickly overshadowed by the weight of their unspoken emotions. Maya was still keeping her distance, though the moments between her and Alexander seemed to grow, more intense with each passing interaction. He couldn't help but notice how her eyes lingered on him longer than usual, how the air between them crackled with unspoken tension. It was a Saturday evening when Alexander called her, his voice steady, yet tinged with the hint of something deeper. Maya, I need to talk to you. Can we meet? Maya had been expecting this. She had known the moment would come when they couldn't keep pretending like everything was just business. Alexander had made it clear that he wanted more than just a professional connection, and despite her best efforts to keep her emotions in check, she knew she wanted him to. But the fear of being hurt again lingered in her heart like an old scar. The meeting, the high stakes, they met at a quiet, upscale restaurant by the water, the twinkling lights of the Miami skyline reflecting off the surface of the bay. It was late evening, and the restaurant was nearly empty. The intimacy of the setting was perfect, perfectly romantic, and equally dangerous. Maya arrived first, her heels clicking against the marble floor as she walked to their table. When Alexander appeared, dressed casually in a dark jacket and jeans, the warmth of the night air seemed to evaporate, replaced by the electric charge between them. Maya, you wanted to talk, she asked, her voice cool, but the tension in the air made it hard for her to hide the emotion just beneath the surface. Alexander, smiling softly, yeah, I did. He sat down across from her, his gaze never leaving her face. I know you've been keeping your distance, and I get it. But I can't keep pretending that I don't feel this. Whatever this is between us. Maya shifted slightly, trying to stay composed. She had spent days trying to rationalize her feelings for him. She wasn't sure she could trust him, and yet the pull between them was undeniable. She knew that if she wasn't careful, she'd be in over her head. Maya, and what exactly is this, Alexander? You've been telling me for weeks that you want more, but the truth is, you don't know what you want. You're used to controlling everything. But love doesn't work like that. Alexander leaned forward, his expression soft but intense. He wasn't used to opening up, but Maya had a way of making him drop his guard, of making him want to be real. Alexander, maybe you're right. Maybe I don't know what I want. But I do know one thing. I've never felt this way about anyone. I can't promise you a perfect future, but I can promise you that I'm here. And I want to be with you, Maya, for real. Maya's heart raced as she processed his words. Could she trust him? Could she risk letting him into her world, knowing that her heart might be shattered in the process? But as she looked at him, something inside her shifted. Maybe this was the gamble she needed to take. Maya, you can't control everything, Alexander. And I can't be the woman you need me to be. I can only be who I am. That's something you're going to have to accept. Alexander, softly, I can accept that. It's the only thing I know I can accept. For a moment, the weight of their words hung in the air between them, and the tension that had built between them was palpable. Maya took a deep breath, her emotions in turmoil. The thought of losing herself again made her wary, but at the same time, the connection she felt with Alexander was something she couldn't ignore. Maya, so, what's next? Are we going to keep pretending this is just business? Alexander, smiling, no more pretending. He reached across the table, gently taking her hand in his. This is real, Maya, and I'm willing to gamble everything on it. Are you emotional? High vulnerability. Maya stared at his hand in hers, her heart thundering in her chest. She could feel the intensity in his grip, the weight of his words sinking deep into her soul. He was offering something real, something raw, but the vulnerability in his eyes made her question everything she had been running from. Could she trust him? Could she risk her heart again? She looked up at him, her voice quiet but firm. Maya, I'm not promising you anything, Alexander. I'm scared too, but maybe, just maybe, we can take this one step at a time. No expectations, no pressure, just us, figuring it out together. Alexander's smile widened, his heart lifting as he realized that this was it. This was the moment he had been waiting for, the moment when he could stop hiding behind the walls of his success and wealth and allow himself to love. Alexander, one step at a time. I can do that. For the first time in a long while, Alexander felt hope. Not for his empire or the business he had built, but for the woman sitting across from him. The woman who had the power to change everything. The decision, the gamble of love. They spent the rest of the evening talking, their words flowing easily now, no longer heavy with uncertainty or fear. Maya felt herself opening up in a way she hadn't in years, and Alexander found himself letting go of the need to control everything. They were both taking a gamble, and neither knew where it would lead. But in that moment, they both knew that the risk was worth it. As the night drew to a close, Alexander walked Maya to her car, his hand brushing hers one last time. The city lights flickered in the distance, and the soft hum of Miami seemed to fade into the background as they stood together. At the edge of something unknown, Maya, I don't know what this is, Alexander, but I'm willing to find out. Alexander, me too, Maya, me too. And with that, the beginning of their journey together unfolded a journey neither of them had anticipated, but one that was filled with promise, trust, and the gamble of love. The days following their conversation at the restaurant felt like a whirlwind. For the first time in weeks, Maya and Alexander were finally on the same page. There was no more pretending, no more barriers between them. They were learning how to navigate the delicate balance of trust, vulnerability, and the unknowns of their budding relationship. But as the intensity of their feelings grew, so did the pressure to make it work. It was a crisp Saturday afternoon when Maya received a call from Alexander. His voice was calm, but there was a subtle urgency in it that she couldn't ignore. Alexander, Maya, I need to talk to you about something important. Can you come by the resort? Her heart skipped a beat. Every time Alexander called her, she couldn't shake the feeling that the stakes were higher than ever. And yet, something in her responded to the call, an undeniable pull that she couldn't fight. The moment of truth, Maya arrived at the resort in the early evening, the soft glow of the setting sun casting long shadows across the pristine grounds. She walked through the lobby, her heels clicking against the marble floor. And as soon as she stepped outside onto the terrace, she saw Alexander standing there, looking out over the ocean. He was dressed in a casual jacket and jeans, his posture relaxed, but there was something in his eyes that made her heart race. He was nervous. She had never seen him like this before. "Maya, you wanted to see me." She tried to sound calm, but the tension between them was palpable. Alexander, turning to face her, "Yes, I did. I need you to understand something about us." His voice was steady, but Maya could see the weight of his words hanging heavily in the air. He was about to take another risk, and so was she. "Maya, Alexander, if you're trying to push me away, you're not doing a good job of it." "What's going on?" He took a deep breath, running a hand through his hair before speaking. "Alexander, I know we've said we're taking this one step at a time, but I'm not sure if I can keep pretending like it's just a slow burn. I don't want to hold back anymore. I want all of you, Maya. I've never felt this way before, and it scares me." Maya felt her chest tighten. He wanted her. But could she give him what he needed without losing herself? "Maya, softly, I'm not ready for anything more than what we have now, Alexander. I'm still figuring out where I fit in your world. And I'm still figuring out if I can truly trust you." Alexander, nodding, "I get that. But what I'm asking for is simple trust. I'm not asking you to lose yourself in me. I'm asking you to let me in, to let us figure this out without the walls." The push and pull. Maya looked out at the ocean, her mind racing. She had never been one to rush into anything, especially not when it came to relationships. Her independence had always been her anchor. But when she looked at Alexander, she saw something different, a man who was willing to lay himself bare, to trust her with his heart. "Maya, do you really understand what you're asking for, Alexander? Because trust isn't just about words, it's about actions. You can't control everything in your life, not even me. Alexander, I know, and I don't want to control you, but I want to build something with you, and I need you to trust that I won't break that. We've both been hurt before. I know that, but I'm not running away from this." Maya felt a lump form in her throat. She had never been so raw, so open with anyone. And yet, here she was, on the edge of a decision. That could change everything. Could she trust him? Could she trust herself? "Maya, I'm scared. Alexander, I'm scared of losing myself in you, of getting too caught up in something I can't control. I don't want to lose what I've worked for. I don't want to lose me." Alexander, stepping closer, gently cupping her face. "I'm not asking you to lose yourself. I'm asking you to share your life with me. We can build something together without losing who we are. I'm willing to do that. Are you?" The emotional high taking the leap. There was a long silence between them. The sound of the ocean crashing against the shore mingling with their shallow breaths. Maya felt her walls start to crumble, just a little bit. She knew she wasn't ready for everything, but maybe she didn't have to be. Maybe this was about taking the leap, trusting him and herself. "Maya, I'm willing to try. But you have to understand this won't be easy. You can't rush me, Alexander. I need time." Alexander, smiling softly, "Time is the one thing I'm willing to give you. I've got nothing but time if you'll share it with me." For the first time, Maya felt the weight of her fear begin to lift. The man standing in front of her wasn't just the CEO of an empire. He wasn't just a powerful, wealthy man. He was someone who wanted to be with her, who was willing to fight for her. And maybe, just maybe, she could allow herself to fight for him too. Climactic moment, trusting the gambelays the sun dipped below the horizon, casting the world in a soft golden light. Alexander reached out to her, his hand brushing against hers. It was the simplest of gestures, yet it felt like the most intimate thing he had ever done. Maya, smiling softly, "You're asking a lot. You know that, right?" Alexander, with a knowing smile, "I am. But I think it's worth it." Maya took his hand, feeling the warmth of his touch seep into her skin. This was the beginning of something new, of something real. They weren't perfect, and their path wasn't going to be easy, but in that moment they had each other, and that was enough. Maya, "All right, Alexander, let's take this one step at a time, but no more running, and no more walls." Alexander, his voice soft but filled with promise, no more walls, just us. As they stood together, hand in hand, the world around them seemed to fade away. The city lights of Miami twinkled in the distance, and for the first time in a long time, they both felt like they were exactly where they were supposed to be. The gamble of love had begun, and for Maya and Alexander, the stakes were high, but so was the promise of what they could build together. The weeks that followed the conversation on the terrace were a whirlwind for both Maya and Alexander. Their connection, once tentative and cautious, had blossomed into something deeper, more intimate. But despite the undeniable chemistry, they were still standing on the edge of something uncertain. The stakes were higher now. The more they gave, the more there was to lose. Maya's dilemma, internal conflict. Maya had always been fiercely independent. She had worked for everything. She had nothing was ever handed to her. Every accomplishment had been earned through hard work, dedication, and sacrifice. So, when Alexander began to pull her into his world, a world of luxury, power, and wealth, unsettled her. The idea of relying on someone else, even for something as simple as emotional support, was alien to her. One morning, Maya stood in her apartment overlooking the city of Miami. The skyline stretched before her, just as it had for years, but today it felt different. Her world felt different. Her phone buzzed in her hand, a text from Alexander. "Maya, I need to see you. Can we meet tonight? I have something important to discuss." She stared at the message for a moment, the words echoing in her mind. Something important. The familiar tug in her chest was back, the fear, the hesitation, the uncertainty. Could she really trust him with her heart? Could she give up her independence? Would she lose herself in his world? Alexander's struggle, vulnerability. Meanwhile, Alexander was struggling with his own demons. After everything that had happened, he couldn't shake the thought that maybe he wasn't the man Maya needed. She was smart, strong, and independent. He had lived his life building an empire, but now he was unsure of how to build a future with her. Despite all the business meetings, the deals, the yachts, and the private jets, he had never felt more vulnerable. Maya had opened a door in his heart that he had long shut away, but he couldn't help but fear that he was losing control of his carefully constructed life. It was late in the evening when he called her. His voice was different this time, more uncertain, more raw than ever before. "Alexander, Maya, I need to see you. I've been thinking about us, about everything, and I'm scared, Maya." Maya's heart skipped a beat. She had never heard him say that before. Scared. The powerful, unflappable billionaire, afraid. Maya, scared of what? Us. Alexander pauses, scared of not being enough, scared that I might not be able to give you what you need. Maya's emotions were torn. She could feel the sincerity in his words, but could she let herself be vulnerable enough to embrace them? The confrontation, emotional climax later, that night, Maya walked into one of the most luxurious restaurants in Miami. The tension between them was thick as they sat at a quiet table in the back. The candlelight flickered between them, but the distance was palpable. They weren't the same people who had shared laughter and light-hearted conversation just a few weeks ago. This was different, this was real. Maya, you've been distant lately, Alexander. What's going on? You're not the same man I met. Alexander, looking down, I'm scared. Maya, I'm scared that I don't know how to be what you need me to be. I've spent so long building this life, but I don't know how to share it. How to make room for you, Maya, softly, and I've spent so long building my own life, Alexander. I don't know how to be a part of yours without losing myself. For a moment, neither spoke. The weight of their words hung between them. The lights in the restaurant seemed to dim. The world outside felt far away. In that stillness, Maya realized that she had been building walls, 2 walls against being loved. Walls against trusting someone enough to let them in. Maya, maybe we're both scared, Alexander. Maybe that's why this is so hard. Alexander, softly, I don't want to be scared anymore. I want to be with you, but I need to know you feel the same. Maya, looking at him, her eyes searching, I'm not sure I know how to trust anyone, Alexander. You have to understand that I can't just dive in without knowing you'll be there when it gets hard. Alexander, gently, I don't have all the answers, but I'm willing to try. I'm willing to face the hard stuff with you. No more running. No more hiding. We can do this together. The emotional turning point, Maya sat back, the weight of his words sinking deep into her chest. She had spent her life protecting herself, building walls around her heart. But this man had managed to break through more than she was willing to admit. For the first time, she felt the truth of his words. Could she trust him? Could she trust herself? Maya, whispering, you don't know what this means to me, Alexander, but I'm willing to try to. The silence between them felt different now. Not heavy, but relieved a shift in their dynamic. Alexander reached for her hand, his touch warm and steady. She didn't pull away. Alexander, we'll take this one day at a time, Maya, but I promise you, I'm all in. If you are, Maya, soft smile, one day at a time. I can do that. The night stretched on, but they no longer felt the distance that had separated them. There was still uncertainty, yes, but there was also hope. Miami was never quiet, but tonight it felt like the world was holding its breath. The city buzzed with the usual hum of nightlife, the streets filled with cars and neon lights reflecting on the wet pavement. But for Maya Turner, this night felt different, the calm after the storm. After weeks of internal battles, she and Alexander had decided to take their relationship to the next level. They had faced their fears, opened up, and finally agreed to trust each other. But now, the test had come. Maya's dilemma, facing reality, had been 3 days since they had admitted their feelings for each other. The emotional connection had deepened, and for once, Maya felt as though she was beginning to trust someone again. But even with the shared moments of vulnerability, something in the back of her mind nagged at her. She was still unsure. She had been alone for so long, and now she was letting someone else into her life in ways she had never done before. Maya had always kept herself busy with her work, her goals, her independence. She hadn't let a man into her life like this in years. And yet, with Alexander, she felt something real. The feelings she had for him were undeniable. But there was always that fear of losing herself in a man who lived in a world so different from hers. Could she balance her life with his? Could she keep her own identity while becoming part of his world? She had a meeting scheduled with Alexander later that evening. But the moment she arrived at his office, her thoughts were a whirlwind of conflicting emotions, the test, external pressure. When Maya walked into the penthouse office, she found Alexander standing by the window, looking out over the Miami skyline. His usual confident stance was replaced with a hint of unease. He turned when she entered, his expression softer than usual. "Alexander, Maya, I need to talk to you about something. It's important." Maya felt a tight knot form in her stomach. Important. That word always made her anxious. What could be so important that it had him looking so serious? "Maya, what's going on, Alexander?" "Alexander," taking a deep breath, "I've received an offer from a potential business partner. They want me to go public with the company, expand even more, go global, but it comes with strings attached. There's a catch that I didn't see coming." Maya, sitting down, "What kind of catch?" "Alexander, they want me to compromise some of my principles for the sake of the deal. It's a risky move, and I'm not sure what it means for my future or ours." Maya's heart raced. She could feel the weight of the conversation. This wasn't just about business. This was about his values, and hers too. She could see the internal conflict in his eyes. He was a man who had spent his life building a powerful empire, and now he was faced with a decision that could change everything. "Maya, Alexander, you've built this empire from the ground up, but what's more important to you? The deal, or your integrity, or, maybe, your future with me?" The question hit him hard, and for a moment, Alexander was silent. He walked over to his desk, gripping the edge as he stared at the papers in front of him. The decision he was about to make could determine everything, not just his career, but his relationship with Maya. "Alexander, softly, I've always made decisions based on numbers, on facts. But this time, I don't know. This could make or break everything. If I take the deal, I'll have more power, more influence. But I'll lose a part of myself, and I'm not sure I can do that. Not with you in my life." Maya stood up, walking over to him. She placed a hand on his arm, grounding him. "Maya, you don't have to make this decision alone, Alexander. We're in this together, no matter what happens. But you have to decide what kind of man you want to be. Not for me, but for yourself." Her words struck a chord within him. He had spent so many years chasing power and wealth that he had lost sight of what truly mattered. This was the moment where he had to choose himself. "Alexander, I don't want to lose myself, Maya, but I'm afraid if I don't take this deal, I'll regret it for the rest of my life. But I can't keep running from the truth. I have to make this choice for us." Maya's moment of clarity. Trusting the process, Maya stood there for a moment, feeling the weight of his words. She knew the decision was monumental. It wasn't just about the business deal, it was about Alexander choosing what kind of person he wanted to be. She could feel the trust building between them, but the stakes were high. "Maya, I can't decide for you, Alexander. But I can tell you this, you've always been about control, and maybe it's time to let go. Not of the things that matter, but of the things that don't. The world you've built, it's incredible. But the world we could build together, it's even better. Alexander, looking into her eyes. You make me believe I can do this, Maya. I can do it for us. For you, Maya. Then make the decision you need to make. And know that whatever happens, I'll be right here with you. But you have to be the one to choose what's worth fighting for. The turning point, breaking free. Alexander stared at her, a sense of clarity washing over him. For the first time in his life, he felt like he had something more important than money and power. He had Maya, and he wasn't going to let the world of business steal that from him. Alexander, I'll turn down the deal. Maya, I'll fight for what I believe in, not just for more power. I'll fight for us. Maya smiled, a look of pride in her eyes. They had crossed a threshold tonight, and though the path ahead would still be filled with challenges, they would face them together. Maya, I knew you'd make the right choice. Alexander, it wasn't about being right, Maya. It was about choosing what's real. And this is what's real. The weeks after Alexander turned down the business deal were both the best and the hardest of Maya's life. The tension between them had dissipated, replaced by a new, tentative trust. They were moving forward, building something together that felt real and raw. But despite the progress, Maya couldn't shake the feeling that the past would eventually catch up with them. She had always been cautious, keeping her heart under lock and key. Love, for her, had always been something to fear. Her past was full of betrayals, missteps, and failed relationships. She had learned to depend on no one but herself, and now, with Alexander, that sense of independence was being tested like never before. Maya's internal struggle, facing her fear it, was one late evening when the shadow of her past reappeared in a way she hadn't expected. She was working in her office, the gentle hum of the city drifting in from outside, when she received a message. Maya, we need to talk. I know you're with him now, but I won't let you forget what you walked away from. Meet me tomorrow. We can't avoid this forever. The message was from Ethan, her ex-fiancé, the man who had left her broken, the man she had given her heart to once before, only to watch him betray her trust. Her stomach tightened as she read the words again. She had thought he was gone from her life for good. Maya's breath caught in her chest. Ethan had always been a reminder of her deepest fear, that opening her heart to someone meant opening herself, to hurt, to betrayal. And now, here he was, threatening to tear apart everything she had worked so hard to build with Alexander. She took a deep breath, trying to push the panic away. She couldn't let him ruin this, not again. The confrontation, the past versus the present the next day. Maya met Ethan in a quiet cafe on the outskirts of Miami. She walked into the cafe, the doorbell chiming above her, and immediately spotted him at the corner table, waiting for her. Ethan looked the same, well-dressed, confident, with that charming smile that once made her weak in the knees. But now it felt like nothing more than a mask, a reminder of the man who had once shattered her. Maya, what do you want, Ethan? Why now? Ethan, with a smirk, I just wanted to remind you of something important. You left me, remember? You walked away from everything we had. Maya, coldly no. You walked away, Ethan. You betrayed me. You lied, and I didn't deserve that. Ethan leaned forward, his eyes glinting with something darker. Ethan, oh, come on, Maya. Don't act like you've been living some perfect life. You've moved on, sure, but you can't tell me you've forgotten how good we were together. How good I made you feel. Maya, firmly no, Ethan. I haven't forgotten, but I've learned that I'm better off without you, and you need to accept that. There was a long silence between them, the weight of their past pressing down. On Maya, she had loved him once, and for a fleeting moment, she felt the old hurt rushing back. But then, she reminded herself of what she had now, the trust she was building with Alexander, the future they were creating together. Maya, I'm done. Ethan, don't ever contact me again. Ethan's smile faltered for the briefest moment, but then he leaned back in his chair, his voice tinged with a cold edge. Ethan, fine, but don't think for a second that you've escaped. What you're building with him will only end in the same way we did. Trust me, Maya, he'll disappoint you. Maya stood up, her pulse racing but her resolve stronger than ever. Maya, you don't know him, Ethan, and you don't know me. I'm done. With that, she turned and walked out, the door slamming behind her. Maya's realization, trusting Alexander that evening. As Maya sat in her apartment, the weight of the confrontation with Ethan hung heavy in her mind. She couldn't deny that part of her feared what he had said, that Alexander would one day disappoint her like everyone else had. She couldn't keep running from her past, but she also couldn't let it control her future. She reached for her phone and dialed Alexander's number, the familiar weight of the decision pressing down on her. When he picked up, his voice was warm, soothing. Alexander, hey Maya, how's your day been? Maya, I need to see you. There was a pause before he responded, his tone serious. Alexander, of course, I'll be there in 30 minutes. Is everything all right, Maya? Pausing, I don't know yet, but I need to talk to you about us. The climax, truth, and vulnerability. When Alexander arrived, Maya was sitting on the couch, her legs curled beneath her, looking out of the window. The city was alive with lights, but Maya felt like she was in a world of her own. Alexander sat beside her, his presence grounding her, even as she struggled with the words she knew she needed to say. Maya, I met with Ethan today. Alexander's face softened as he listened. Maya, he told me that I was just going to be disappointed again, that I couldn't trust you the way I trust myself. Alexander, gently, you know that's not true. Maya, you know that I would never do anything to hurt you. Maya, tears welling up, I want to believe you, Alexander, but there's this voice in my head telling me that I'm going to lose everything, that I'm not enough. Alexander, taking her hand, you are enough, and we'll face whatever comes together. But you have to trust me, Maya. We can't keep running from our pasts if we want a future. I'm here, no matter what. Maya's heart clenched as she looked into his eyes. She realized, in that moment, that trust wasn't just something she gave to him, was something she had to give to herself too. Maya, I'm scared, Alexander, but I'm willing to trust you. I'm willing to try if you'll have me, Alexander. Smiling softly, I'll always have you, Maya, and we'll get through this together. The days that followed the confrontation with Ethan marked a new chapter in Maya and Alexander's relationship. They had both laid their cards on the table. Honesty had replaced hesitation, and trust had begun to root itself firmly between them. But even as they embraced the rawness of their feelings, there was still an underlying tension. This wasn't just about their love anymore. It was about what they would build together. Maya's new reality, a change of heart. Maya woke up early one morning, the warm Miami sun streaming through her bedroom window. She had always been an early riser, the stillness of the morning giving her a chance to collect her thoughts before the world rushed in. As she stood in front of the mirror, her hand instinctively rested on her stomach, a habit she had developed over the past week. The morning sickness, though mild, was a sign that her life had changed in ways she hadn't anticipated. Maya was pregnant. She hadn't told Alexander yet. There hadn't been a good moment. Everything had felt so new, so fragile between them. The pregnancy wasn't planned. And for a moment, Maya felt overwhelmed. What did this mean for their future? Was she ready to bring a child into a world that was still full of uncertainty? As she sipped her coffee, her phone buzzed with a message from Alexander. "I need you to meet me for lunch today. There's something important I want to discuss." Her heart skipped a beat. The last few days had been filled with such deep connection, but now something felt different. Something was coming. The lunch meeting, a turning point. Maya arrived at the restaurant where they had first spoken about their future. It had been a quiet spot, overlooking the bay, and it seemed like the perfect place to talk about the next step. When she arrived, Alexander was already sitting at their usual table, a look of serious contemplation on his face. He stood as she approached, a hint of concern in his eyes. "Alexander, hey, you okay?" "Maya, yeah, just a lot on my mind." She sat down, trying to sound casual, but the tension in her voice was hard to ignore. "Alexander, I get that. I've been thinking a lot too, about us, about everything." Maya studied him carefully. His voice was softer than usual, his posture slightly tense, as though he was waiting for her to speak first. It felt like the calm before a storm. "Maya, what are you thinking about?" He leaned forward slightly, his eyes locked on hers, and for the first time in a long time, she saw vulnerability in him. "Alexander, Maya, I know we've talked about taking things one day at a time, but I need to know, do you see a future with me? With us?" Maya felt the weight of his question settle in her chest. She had always feared commitment, always kept her heart at arm's length. But now, with him sitting across from her, her world felt like it was beginning to shift. "Maya," pausing, "I do, Alexander. But there's something I haven't told you yet." He raised an eyebrow, clearly intrigued, his hand instinctively reaching out to take hers. "Alexander, what is it?" Maya took a deep breath, her hands trembling slightly. The words were harder to say than she had expected, but they had to be said. She had to face it, just as she had faced her feelings for him. "Maya, I'm pregnant, Alexander." For a moment, the world seemed to stop. She could feel his fingers tighten around hers, his eyes widening in surprise. He didn't say anything immediately. The silence was heavy, but Maya wasn't sure what she was expecting from him. She had no idea what this would mean for them. "Alexander, you're pregnant." His voice was barely above a whisper, and his gaze flickered between her face and their intertwined hands. "Maya, yes. I didn't plan it. And I didn't know how to tell you, but I can't keep it from you anymore." The emotional roller coaster decision. Alexander leaned back in his chair, his mind racing. He had always prided himself on being in control, always the one who made the decisions. But now, as he looked at Maya, he realized that there were things beyond his control. He had never imagined this. A child, with Maya. His life had been about deals, about strategy, about winning. And now, he was faced with something that required more than just a planet-required heart. It required commitment. "Alexander, Maya, I don't know what to say. This is a lot to process. Maya, I know. I wasn't sure what to expect either. But I want you to know that I'm not asking you for anything. I'm not asking for anything other than your support. I'm not sure what's going to happen next, but I want you to be a part of this." Alexander's eyes softened, and for the first time, he could see what had always been there, her vulnerability, her strength, and her courage. Alexander, you have my support. Maya, and whatever happens next, I'm with you. This is something I never expected, but I'll be damned if I'm not going to be a part of this future. With you. Maya looked up at him, a sense of relief washing over her. She had feared this moment, feared that he would walk away, that the pressure would break them. But instead, Alexander was offering her something she hadn't expected. Future, their future. Maya, smiling softly, are you sure? Because this is going to change everything. Alexander, I'm sure. I don't know what the future holds, but I know this I'm not leaving. We're in this together, Maya. The family in the making new beginnings. As the evening wore on, the weight of the world seemed to lift from Maya's shoulders. She had feared that the news of her pregnancy would drive Alexander away. But instead, it had brought them closer. The city lights sparkled outside the restaurant window. But inside, Maya and Alexander found a new sense of peace in each other's presence. It was as if, together, they could face whatever came next. Maya, I didn't think it would be this simple. I thought you'd run. Alexander, I didn't expect to feel this way, Maya. But the truth is, I've spent so much of my life building something that I thought was important. But I see now that what's important is this. You, us. Maya reached for his hand, her fingers lightly brushing against his. So, what now? She asked, her voice soft. Alexander, now we build. We figure it out. And no matter what, we do it together. Maya smiled, a genuine, warm smile that reached her eyes. It was the first time she truly felt like they could face the future, no matter what it held, together. The days following their decision felt like a whirlwind. Maya and Alexander had moved past the fear and doubt that once haunted them. Now they were walking into an entirely new chapter, one that was full of hope, promise, and uncertainty. The future was unwritten, and though neither of them knew exactly what would happen, they were ready to face it together. Building the future together, the first steps. Maya sat at her kitchen table, the morning sun streaming in through the windows, casting a warm glow over her. The early pregnancy symptoms had passed, leaving her with a growing sense of peace. But it wasn't just the pregnancy that was changing. Her life, it was everything. She had never imagined this future. She had always been the one to hold control, to keep her distance, to make sure that she could rely on herself and no one else. But now, with Alexander standing beside her, the walls she had built over the years were slowly coming down. Her heart had opened in ways she never thought possible. There was a knock at the door. Maya stood and walked over to answer it, expecting to find Alexander waiting for her, as he had so many times in the past few weeks. When she opened the door, there he was, standing in front of her, a soft smile on his face, holding a bouquet of flowers. Maya: smiling softly for me. Alexander, of course, you deserve them. But I think we both know it's not about the flowers, it's about us. Maya's heart fluttered. She hadn't realized until that moment just how much her world had changed since Alexander had entered. She had always thought that love was a distraction, a weakness. But now, standing before the man who had fought for her trust, who had made her feel seen, she realized that this was what she had been waiting for. Maya, we've been through so much, haven't we? Alexander, we have. But look at where we are now, together. He stepped inside, and they shared a quiet moment before Maya spoke again. Maya, I think I'm ready, Alexander. ready to take the next step, but I still don't know exactly what that means. I've never had a clear path, a plan, but I know that I want to build that future with you." Alexander's face softened, his eyes full of affection and admiration. "Alexander, we don't need a plan. We'll create it together. Step by step, we'll figure it out as we go." Maya smiled, her heart swelling with love and hope for the future. For once, she felt like she wasn't walking alone, facing the uncertainty, the future of love that evening. They stood on the balcony of her apartment, looking out at the twinkling city lights of Miami. The air was warm, and the sounds of the city seemed distant, as if the world had slowed down just for them. The uncertainty of the future still lingered between them, but for the first time, Maya realized that it wasn't something to fear. The future was an open road, waiting for them to walk down it together. "Maya, so what now? Do we just live our lives and see where it goes?" Alexander, smiling exactly. "We'll live, Maya. We'll make mistakes. We'll have victories. But we'll do it together, and that's enough for me." The warmth of his words filled her chest. She had always believed that success and wealth were the ultimate goals. But now she understood that love, partnership, and trust were the true foundations of a meaningful life. The promise of a family. A few weeks later, Maya and Alexander stood in the nursery of their new home, the walls painted a soft, calming shade of blue. The room was still a work in progress, but it was filled with hope. As they looked around, it became clear to both of them this was the beginning of their family. "Maya, can you believe it? We're going to be parents." Alexander, smiling, placing his hand on her stomach. "It's a little overwhelming, but in the best way possible. We'll make it work, Maya, I promise." They shared a quiet moment, both lost in the idea of what was to come. They had faced their pasts, dealt with their doubts, and now they were here, ready to embrace the future together. "Maya, I used to think that love was something that would hold me back, that I needed to keep control, but now I see it differently. Love is the thing that frees me, Alexander. It's the thing that makes everything feel right." Alexander, looking at her with admiration. "I feel the same way, Maya. I never imagined my life could be this fulfilling. But with you, with our family, it's more than I ever dreamed of. A new beginning, the unwritten future." As they stood in the nursery, the realization hit them both. They were building something real. It wasn't perfect, it wasn't always easy, but it was theirs. "Alexander, I don't know what the future holds, Maya, but I know one thing for sure. I want to face it with you, with our family, together. Maya, me too, Alexander. I couldn't imagine it any other way." The city of Miami sprawled before them, a city full of opportunities and challenges. But as they stood there, hand in hand, they felt an overwhelming sense of peace. They had taken the leap. They had chosen each other, not just for the life they had now, but for the one they would create. And whatever the future held, they would build it together. The future was unwritten, but it was no longer filled with fear. It was filled with hope, love, and the promise of a family.